Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas is proud to partner with the Texas Tribune to provide free public events like the one you're about to see. These candid conversations are designed to promote public dialogue and civic engagement throughout the state.
Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Joe Deshotel, Allan Ritter, and James White. It is good to have you all here. I appreciate it. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but Chairman Ritter, out of deference to you and your work this session, as I mentioned, on water, and that's a problem that we're still coming to grips with in the state. No matter what the weather on a given day may be in Texas, even if it's raining, we still have a problem. I want to ask you about whether you think the plane was landed safely during this legislative session. We had a period of time that we refer to as the worst one-year drought in the history of the state, worse than the time it never rained, for those of you old enough to remember. We are back up above 90% drought conditions in the state of Texas. People turn on their taps, water comes out. They turn on their sprinklers, water comes out. They could be forgiven for thinking that the crisis is over. But really, Chairman, we've only begun our work. The work is not ended, right?
Well, that's correct. I think we're going to have another really dry year. I wish I had a crystal ball and could tell you how long the drought's going to last, and you can talk to different climatologists and they'll give you one answer or the other. But the truth is Texas is not prepared for the next 50 years. We're not prepared today if we have a continued long-term drought similar to the 50s. We were lucky that after 11, which was, I believe it was 11, my years are running together now, where we had the single driest year on record, that we had a year that in a lot of parts of Texas we got some quality rains. We're actually, Jefferson County in southeast Texas is back in the, I think, the moderate drought, which we haven't been in for a while. So Texas is not prepared. We do have the plan to get us where our goals are for the next 50 years, and we do, after this last legislative session, have a mechanism to help finance and move our local entities along.
Right. Now, Representative White, here in East Texas, the problem may not seem as dire, especially because relative to a lot of the other parts of the state, this is a pretty good place in terms of wetness and water, right? Here, at least in the part of the state we're in, problem is not as bad as it is in some other places.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Evan, on behalf of the 170,000 or so Southeast Texans in Polk, Tyler, Jasper, Newton, Hardin counties, thank you for coming to Southeast Texas, and obviously I'm proud to represent those Texans up that way. When I look at House District 19, in Polk County you have Lake Livingston, in Tyler you have Dam B and Rayburn, and then over in Newton County you have the Sabine River Authority, and I probably have more surface water than any House member in the Texas legislature. So, you know, Ritter's bill that we eventually adopted and sent to the voters, it was important to me, it was important to my district as far as leaving it better than the way we found it.
Right.
And it's important to the district as far as when I look out that window there and I see our refineries down here in Jefferson, and that a lot of that water resource in my district is important in hydrating these refineries and keeping our economy going in Southeast Texas.
Right. Does that concern you? I mean, one of the things you hear about well, this will be a theme I think we'll come back to today, is that the oil and gas boom has certainly been beneficial to the Texas economy, and this part of the state understands that pretty much as well as any. But Chairman Deshotel, the fact is that the energy sector is using water in the course of its work. A lot of energy companies are recycling water, using water that would otherwise not be usable by the average person in Texas. But the reality is there's a concern about whether we're victims of our own success on a whole host of issues, beginning with water, where our population is growing. We're bragging all the time about adding 1,000 people to the state a day, and yet those people are not bringing water with them when they come. And a lot of the sectors of the economy that have been so beneficial to the state overall are big users of water. So do we have a tension at work here between our success and our limited resources?
Yes, we do, and I think we need to look back historically, because the only reason that Representative White was able to make the statement he said about Dam B and all the surface is because 50 years ago there were people with vision who did what we're trying to do now to plan for 50 years in the future. Because if they had not done what they did, there would not be a Sam Rayburn or Dam B and the amount of water that we're enjoying. So we're hoping that our citizens today don't look at, well, that's going to cost me, but look at the future of the state and the future needs of the state. And we also look to industry to do their part, and they are coming up with new technologies and ways to recycle, reuse the same water over and over and over, because we don't want to punish industry, because they are what fueling the economy here in the state of Texas. But they are, I believe, beginning to understand they have to be good corporate citizens. And even down in Eagle Ford, they're coming up with ways in the fracking system to use other means and to reuse and recycle a lot of the water that they were using before. That was a big drain on the system.
Right. Now, Mr. White, I want to pick up on something that Chairman Deshotel said. He used the word invest in talking about the future of Texas. This does seem to be another one of these inflection points in our conversations in Austin and elsewhere. On the one hand, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. And I know you're a very conservative member, and you've tended to believe that as a state we need to live within our means. But the contrast to that is we don't have a spending problem, we have a failure to invest in the future problem. That can be, maybe in a broad sense, that's kind of the two worldviews that are in competition often in budget fights. So what do you do in a case like this? On the one hand, we want to stay within our means. We don't want to turn Texas into, God forbid, California, is what folks on your side politically will say, where we spend more than we have. But on the other hand, to Chairman Deshotel's point, many of the things you do brag on were things that happened because people 50 years ago were willing to invest in the future. So how do you square that circle?
Well, I think you square it by making sure that government stays, like you said, within its means in doing that which we say is core government services. And I believe the constitutional amendment that the voters passed is well within that. And you may use the word invest. I just use the term just leaving it better than the way we found it. You know, when I look at those water resources, those reservoirs in my district, you go back and look at the history of them, they were also built as a result of that drought. So I see us making the same decisions after the sharp drought recently, and we'll continue to work our way out of this.
Right. Chairman Ritter, you'd forgive me for using the phrase, a precipitating event is what actually is necessary. But to stay on the pun here, there are a lot of people who think that $2 billion against a $53 billion water plan estimated cost over 50 years is a drop in the bucket. The fact is, we knew we had this plan in place before, wanted to fund this plan. No money was allocated toward the execution of this plan until this session. The $2 billion did not come out of general revenue, as some might have preferred, came out of the rainy day fund. Another kind of irony, linguistically, rhetorically, the rainy day fund is solving our water problem. And a lot of people believe, you argued, that $2 billion used as a revolving loan fund would actually be worth quite a bit more to us over time in terms of what it would accomplish. So are we to take that that's all we're going to do, that we get into the next legislative session, you'll be gone, you'll be watching it as a spectator, and we're not going to look to allocate any additional resources from the state to solve the problem, or is this it?
No, I wouldn't say that the future legislatures will not look at different programs or even putting in more money. For instance, in the state water plan, in the methodology we have right now, there are no grants. So it only can tie to the general obligation bond or one of those type programs. And I believe in sometime in the future the legislature will have to look at more of a grant type program that some local entities are going to possibly need. Now you got to remember, the state water plan is about local entities. It's about regional planning groups who tell us what they need. They have not told us they need grants. What they've told us is that they have certain cash flow requirements they need over a period of time to do their due diligence to get certain projects going before they can even start billing you your new water rate. That's been the biggest problem of a lot of the development on water resource issues, that they couldn't go to the voters and say, well, voters, we're going to have to do a $150 million project that's going to be to develop X amount of water in 25 years, even though it's going to take us that long or almost that long to get it. And by the way, we can't generate new cash to pay for that for 15 years. Well, they don't have the cash flow to do it, and voters flat out will not go and vote to raise their taxes for something that they're not getting a quicker result.
So this may have been, in the end, the best deal that we're going to get.
Well, no, I don't think so. You got to remember, we probably wouldn't have gotten this done today if we weren't in a drought. Right. It's going to, you know, my prediction is we're going to see in certain parts of Texas it get worse than it is today.
Right.
And in Texas, we do a lot of management by reaction, meaning that the tougher it gets for us, we'll go do something. Right. We'll stand up and we'll deadgum sure spend the money to fix it when we think it's time to fix it.
Right.
That's just Texans. And we have to live with that. But I don't think that the state water plan as it is today is set in gold. I don't think the financing mechanisms are set in gold. We have programs like EDAP and such that are certain scope for certain things. Yep. That I do think that sometime the possibility will be that there might be a requirement or a request from local entities for some type of grant. We have participation, statewide participation in the water plan, and that's built into the SWIFT mechanism.
But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And we can't be tunnel vision about it.
Right. Now, Chairman Deshotel, let me move from water to public education, which is, rather than a physical infrastructure, maybe can be thought of as a social infrastructure issue on which there is just as much conversation about what kind of money we need to really get at this problem. General agreement is that our public education in this state is not as good as we'd like it to be. People disagree about whether it's mediocre or good but not great. It needs something, and we have a very fast-growing population, which, just as it's straining our water resources, is also straining the resources that we have available for public ed. You're a member of the committee. Representative White is a teacher. You both understand education in a very personal and ongoing way. First you, and then Representative White, where do you think we are? We put some money back in this legislative session to public ed that had come out of the previous session. Is it enough, and where do we go from here to tackle the challenges we have on public ed?
Quite a bit of money was put back in this last legislative session.
About $3.5 billion.
Yeah, a little more.
Plus or minus, right?
Was put in, but it was not what was taken out. And reason for that, big reason, because of the pending lawsuit. And we hope that by next legislative session we'll have some direction from the court. Right. Interesting enough, most of the members know what they need to do, but they just don't have the fortitude to do it until they can say the court told us that we have to do this.
You think that politically they've got a problem doing what they know is the correct thing from a policy standpoint?
That's my perspective from just talking to members on the floor who vote a certain way or do a certain thing because they don't have the cover that they need, because the constituents is really hard for people to understand many of the long-term things that we need to do. Just like on the water plan, the issue of conservation is a big issue. And we're not going to get in a real serious conservation mode until just like we didn't get in a real finance mode until there's a crisis that forces it. Right. And so the same thing in education. The major changes that were made in House Bill 5 to the curriculum and to the testing were done because there was a groundswell in the state of parents on the STARS test. And the members knew terms ago that we needed to make these changes, but until there's this the support that they need politically to be able to make that move. Right. So in public education, we know we have to put more money into public education, and are willing to do so. We're just waiting on the court to say this is what we're going to do.
Representative White, this actually dovetails with Chairman Ritter's point, which is that it often takes a gun being put to your head for action to take place. And there are a lot of people who believe that the decision of the court ultimately on the school finance lawsuit, in which up to this point the school districts have prevailed, state is appealing, could be just that gun. And so I want to ask you to what Chairman Deshotel said. Are there a bunch of members in the Capitol running around saying, you know, God, I know we need to fund public ed more, but it's bad for me in a primary, or it's bad for me politically, and I am praying for the court to make me do what I know I ought to do but can't do politically. Do you think that's the deal?
Well, Evan, I'm a proud product of public education here in the state of Texas, from kindergarten all the way to the doctorate level.
Right.
I would personally say, I don't talk to members about needing cover, but I would personally say James White, the only cover he needs is Article 7, Section 1, which mandates the legislature to fund or make suitable provisions for an efficient system of public schools. Yeah. That's the only cover I need. I don't need cover from 9
Unfortunately,
justices.
that's one vote. We got 150
Okay.
votes.
Now the point is, this. The point is this, Evan. I vote on the budget that comes to me. It's like being a soldier. You go to war with the army you have, not the one you wish you had. So I vote on the budget that's brought to me, not necessarily the budget I wish to have. But I heard you talk a lot about the 1,000 people a day or
coming to Texas.
Yeah. They don't bring education. They don't bring asphalt. They don't bring health care. A lot of people are counting the feet. A lot of people are voting with their feet to Texas. But as a policymaker, I'm listening to the feet. And they're coming here for opportunity, primarily economic and job opportunity. So the first thing we need to focus on is ensuring that we continue to supercharge and boost this economy here in Texas, so we'll have the revenue for the things that we need to do: public education, indigent health care in some situations, roads, and public safety. So directly to your question about public education, I think everyone needs to keep their minds open. I think with over 1,100 school districts, the idea that 182 or 3 people have the silver bullet is not right. Just like I don't appreciate 538 people in D.C. trying to tell me what to do down here in Texas.
But you're the ones with the hand on the wheel. That's the, I mean.
Okay,
right?
so this is what, so this is what you do. We have a state board of education that does a curriculum. We have constitutional spending mandate to do that. I think that's what the state of Texas needs to, as far as the legislature needs to be concerned with. And then a lot of these decisions about choice and direction and how to spend these funds, we need to push that down to those local public elected school districts and charter schools.
Right. To your point, though, about the idea that the economic development aspect of this should be the thing first on our minds, and that a healthy economy will enable those things, there are some people who think that it's a chicken and egg deal. So does all this healthy economic activity produce the resources for these things,
it should.
Or does the lack of these things retard our economic activity? So the governor travels around the country pickpocketing businesses from other states. That's kind of what he's done lately, right? And he says low taxes, predictable regulation, tort reform. But he's hearing, it is said, from those places, yes, we want to come to Texas, but is there going to be enough water? Is there going to be adequate health care? Is there adequate public education?
Well, but, when I look at newspaper headlines going into the beginning of sessions in the 1920s and the 1930s, it's the same issues.
Right.
Education, transportation, water.
Chronic problems.
Chronic issues.
Right.
Okay, so you just got to get after it. And again, I think primarily my job as a state legislator here in Texas is to enable people to use their liberty, use their God-given skills and talents. We need to expand liberty on the local level. Provide the adequate resources on the state level with some discretion. I mean, with some guidance. Like you said, we do have our hand on the wheel.
Right.
But this is education a very emotional discussion here in Texas. I mean, after all, we had a war with Mexico. One of the reasons was because we thought that they were not providing public education. So it will continue to be an emotional issue. And what I think as a legislator, I will continue to adhere to Article 7, Section 1 and do my best as far as moving on that route.
Chairman Ritter, to pick up this point and to move it to health care, so you're not running again, so you can tell us what you actually think, right? These guys are not opposed. They're going to get in again, but they're going to have to run at some point in the future. So on the assumption that an ad could be made of this video on White and Deshotel, let's leave them to the side, but Ritter doesn't have to run again. We have more than 6 million people.
Why did I agree to do that?
Well, that's a good question. You may be asking yourself that. I, however, am not. More than 6 million people in the state, 25% of our population has no health insurance. That is not just That is not counting people who are underinsured. That is just no insurance. We know what the uncompensated care costs in counties like this one are. We all know this. We hear this every day in some fashion or form. Very conservative state politically. We don't like Washington. We especially don't like the Affordable Care Act piece. So what do? We still have all these people who have no insurance. We still have seen the cost of health care spiraling upward, threatening to overtake the state budget. And we know that there's an economic development component to health care. We know that there's sort of everything that we're talking about, public education, higher ed, all of this runs somewhere in the vicinity of health care. So what, as a public policy issue, Chairman Ritter, since you're leaving, what should we do?
Well, well, let me just tell you how I think about it.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay.
I've looked all over the Constitution, and I just don't see where anywhere in the Constitution that says you have a born right of government providing you health care. And I think it's something that we, the people, we make the decision we want to do it, how we want to do it, and you got to pay for it. Remember, everything that we're talking about up here, we all pay for. We do not grow money on trees. We get it from you. And, you know, if we didn't have health care, we would not have any budget problems in the state of Texas. There would be no problem with public education. There would be no problem with water. There would be no problem with transportation. None whatsoever. I think it's 60 cents of every dollar that we're taking, new dollar we're taking, goes for health care issues. Personally, I'm one of those that think that we need to back up and really review what we, the people, expect for our government to do for all of us in health care, because it's not going to get any cheaper, in my opinion.
Well, and the fact is, Chairman, as you know, there's a cost to doing something, but there's also a cost to doing nothing.
That's correct.
Right.
And I wish I had the magic ball again to tell you here's what the answer is, because I don't have it. It really, inside of me, to what degree is it the responsibility of our state government and even our federal government to provide lock, stock health care for each and everybody? I question that. I really do.
We're 50 years out, Chairman Deshotel, from the Johnson administration, which is really where the safety net, as we understand it in this country, from which it emanated, right? So we're getting ready to celebrate, have been celebrating a bunch of consequential anniversaries of things that happened in that administration. If President Johnson were up here with us today, would he agree with Chairman Ritter that the state has no obligation to take care of people who don't have the means to take care of themselves? Because at some level, isn't that what we're talking about? These are not people who choose not, in some cases, not in every case, but in some cases, these people who are not choosing not to have health insurance, they're people who don't have the means or the resources. So talk about the historical imperative here to take care of people, and what do we do about that?
Well, I mean, I'm certain that was something that President Johnson thought about and looked to in the future, as well as the Social Security system and other systems that help people who are unable to at certain points in their life. But that's where you're going to find a basic philosophical difference between Republicans and Democrats on these types of issues, because you're going to see a lot of opposition. You see strong opposition, say, to if a person shows up in the emergency room sick who is not a citizen. A lot of people think you shouldn't see them, you should turn them away. I think that's a dangerous idea, because he walks in with tuberculosis and he spreads it to this entire community, then we're going to pay a lot bigger price for that. And so if we don't have health care, there are consequences. I mean, on paper, you can take the 60% off that's spent on health care and say that could go to transportation, it can go to these different things. But then when you have an unhealthy society with all kinds of disease and plagues that's going to affect the workforce.
There are all kinds of additional costs.
There are costs that are going to replace that cost.
Right.
And so, but there should be a balance. I think what we look at is healthcare delivery.
Yeah.
not cutting out health care, but health care delivery. I think there's a lot of cost and a lot of waste in the health care system. I mean, you can go to one of our distributors here in town and buy a set of crutches for $15, but you get the Medicaid is $150 that they pay for these same. That is ridiculous. That is what's driving these kinds of costs, or some of what's driving these kinds of costs.
Right.
Not the availability of health care, it's the cost of health care delivery and the cost of these systems that are operated.
Representative White, I get that. And Representative White, let me ask you a version of the same question, but shorter, that I asked Representative Deshotel. Should we be relitigating the social safety net in this country?
Obviously, you should always be reevaluating any type of public policy. If you look at those programs that you talked about that emerged during the Johnson era, the world was different. We were not competing in a global economy. We were 30–40% of the world's GDP or the world economy in of itself. So things have changed. And obviously we need to go back in and reevaluate these programs, retool them, rethink them, and in some instances maybe you get rid of them, maybe you make them better. But it's not that they're Johnson era programs and should we be relitigating them. There are a lot of legislation that comes up that's so-called conservative. I think we should reevaluate over a period of time. So that's how I'm looking at this issue here.
You mentioned the counties that you are so proud to represent back home. Those counties and those county hospitals are seeing many of those uncompensated care costs every day, week, month, and they're seeing them go up on health care. So the amount of money, I know politically the expansion of Medicaid within this legislature and with these statewide office holders was a non-starter. Get that. Elections have consequences,
but
right?
you know, Evan, I'm still looking at that. The budget that I voted for showed a 9% increase in Medicaid expenditure. Now, it wasn't expanded under, I guess, the way the Affordable Care Act.
You consider that an expansion of Medicaid?
Well, you know, I would ask the loggers in the Walmart in Woodville. I asked the school teachers that go through the shopping lines in the grocery stores. Did they see a 9% increase in their paycheck? Some saw a 9% decrease because of a lot of things, a lot of policy that we're doing in health care.
Yep.
So I saw a 9% increase in Medicaid because in projecting caseload growth. Understand this, Evan, and this is not a conservative or a liberal or Republican and Democrat thing. Too much money chasing after too few goods and services results in inflation. So the question we also have to ask is pouring more money into it, is that really going to solve the situation?
Right.
Or do we look at some of these strategies that Chairman Deshotel in how we spend the money and how we deliver?
Well, in fact, that could be said about public ed. That could be said about essentially any issue. More money is not necessarily the answer. We're going to go to questions in about 5 minutes. I want you to think about things that you want to ask these folks when I'm done with them. Immigration came up in the context of Chairman Deshotel's remarks, maybe population change. And this is a topic that, of any topic in the unusually competitive primaries that we have this cycle, for the press, it's like Christmas every day to have this many competitive elections. We've gotten used to not having much competition in our elections over the last 20 years. Immigration keeps coming up. And there's actually a debate going on, Representative White, Representative Ritter, Chairman Ritter, in the Republican Party over what language we use to talk about this issue. Are we, how does your party welcome people in the emerging Latino population into the Republican Party as voters? Or conversely, in talking about we're going to close the border, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, do you essentially repel those who you wish to attract? I wonder if each of you would talk from your perspective about how the state and how your party should think about the issue of immigration given the realities on the ground in Texas today. And then I want to let Chairman Deshotel come in on what is likely to happen maybe at the federal level, what should happen state, federal in terms of trying to solve this problem. Representative Ritter, Chairman, you first.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm giving you an easy issue to resolve. But again, you're not running again. Just tell us what you think.
Well, to me, it's very simple. We have to shut down the border. In Texas, I can't remember how many, $150 million we've appropriated to it, and there's so much more to shutting down the border than just stopping illegal immigration. The trying to stop the flow of drugs in through the state, things like that that we know have been working since we've injected more money. I'm totally for locking down the border, but I do believe that to the degree that some of the offering of amnesty for illegal aliens that are here, I have a problem with that. Now, devising a working visa program, I'm okay with that. I think that has potential. I do know that, or I feel that in the state of Texas, that if you want to build certain things, like a home, if you can't find some of our neighbors from the south, from Mexico, to be able to do that part of the construction, you're not going to get a house built.
So there's a workforce issue.
Yeah, there's a legitimate workforce issue. There's also, today, we have working visas that right here in Jefferson County, we have a lot of people that come over that are engineers and different type of jobs that are doing it. So it can be done. How do we do it in the level with our neighbor Mexico and help solve the problem for both of us? I think it can be done. It just, you know, let's put our heads together and figure it out. Unfortunately, it's not just the state of Texas that has to do it.
Right.
It is a very big federal responsibility.
Representative White, I want to believe Chairman Ritter's optimism that we have to get it done and we can get it done, but there seems to be very little indication at the federal level that we're getting any closer to some kind of a solution. What do we do?
Well, obviously,
what should Republicans do, particularly in terms of what they advocate?
Okay, well, you got a lot on the plate there. You got
go get it.
Political party advocacy. You've got border security.
Take them in whatever order you want. Take them in whatever order.
But let me start with my constitutional duties and my inherent duties as a member of the state legislature. That is primarily safe communities and securing the border. You know, as an infantry lieutenant, you know, you have the principles of warfare. You never violate one. You can violate the others, but you never violate security. So you have to have security. I've been to the border, excuse me, twice, 2 terms, 2 times. And I'm talking to border agents, I'm talking to Texas Rangers, troopers, game wardens that are doing tours of duty. We have issues down there. Human trafficking, that's not America and that's not Texas. Drug cartels that are doing murdering and hits here in the United States right now, drug running. So that's a security issue, and we have to deal with that. Okay, so putting that aside, now you've got the immigration issue. That's primarily in the U.S. Constitution. That's a power given to the national government. But, you know, we do have laws on the books now. And let me tell you what gets to the crux of this. You know, we're talking about Republican primary voters. Republican primary voters, and this Republican definitely knows why people want to come to the United States. Because of opportunity, because of what we are as a country. But here's the point. Just like if someone comes to your house, you come through the door, you abide by the rules and regulations once you're inside. If you wish to leave, go out the same door. If you wish to stay in the future, we just ask you to do a few things. Learn the language, learn our customs, and definitely become Americans. Because coming to America and being an American is not just about a job. It's a concept. And what Republican primary voters that I talk to, the concern is the rule of law. We did Simpson-Mazzoli in the 80s. That was supposed to be comprehensive immigration. It was supposed to secure the border and do all these things. And here we are back with the same situation. So we can't do comprehensive. We have to do border security first. Then we can work out these other situations. So it's about the rule of law, and Republican primary voters, especially in Southeast Texas, I believe, are tired of different rules for different people in different segments. You know, people in D.C., they got a set of rules. You know, people coming illegally, they have a set of rules. But everyday common people,
Right.
they have to abide by rules and statutes in the book. So I think you're getting to some more deeper issues,
Yeah.
and these are the ones I've brought out here.
Right. Representative Deshotel, hard to argue with what Representative White says.
No, and I don't really would argue with that. But the reason that it is a federal issue is because we have different borders in different states, and we can't have a patchwork of laws and make it work for the country or for the states, because we have freedom to move out of one state to another across our state borders, and so it has to be a comprehensive plan.
And yet you would think in all these primaries, Chairman, with people talking about immigration, if it's really a federal issue, why are they campaigning on an issue that they really can't impact?
Well, because it's a hot button issue, and you can say certain things, and we have so many people who vote based on a single issue. So that if you get that issue and get everybody excited about that issue, you can defeat anybody. And that's unfortunate if you're going to try to take advantage of that. And a lot of people do take advantage of that, and they have these hot button issues that have nothing to do with what's really going to affect everybody's life in the long run, depending on who you elect. But that's just the nature of the beast, and it's the nature of politics.
Right.
We know, and each one of these people know who bring this border issue up, that they can't do a thing about it. But because they know people will vote on them based on what they say, not what they can actually do, and that's just the reality.
It polls well.
Yeah, it polls well.
Okay,
That's
and
right.
Representative White, you take the last one before we
Okay.
open the audience. Yeah.
But safe communities.
Right.
Stopping exploitation of women in the South Texas desert. Ensuring that our people are able to live in liberty and freedom here in the United States, and not under the threat of drug cartels from Mexico or anywhere else. You know, we have a northern border too. Okay, that's porous also.
I'm not sure that the Canadians are posing much of a threat these days.
But
maybe only Justin Bieber, actually.
Well,
right?
but security is what it is in every government, whether it's a city, county, state, national, has an inherent responsibility to maintain safe communities. I should remind you, Fehrenbach's book on Texas history.
Lone Star.
Right. Okay? And, you know, the Governor Cook, I believe, spelled K-O-K-E, C-O-K-E, sent the Texas Rangers into punitive expeditions into northern Mexico to quell violence that was impacting South Texas. Now, I'm not up here.
You're not advocating for that.
No, not necessarily advocating
We'd
that.
have a headline for the Enterprise,
no, yeah,
actually,
right.
if you
I'm
did
not
that.
necessarily advocating that.
Right.
But what I am saying is we do have a role as playing a partner with the national government, and definitely a responsibility to our citizens. We're seeing it
Right.
fiscally in some of our other parts of the budget, but we do have a role in that arena.
Oh, I think that was the headline when James said we're partnering with the federal government. I think that
Well, that's the Constitution.
Yeah, but
That
no,
that's the Constitution. It's a partnership.
He has no opponent this time. It'll be forgotten by the next time. So we're going to stop here and open it up to the audience, but first let's give a hand to and thank Representatives Deshotel, Ritter, and White. Thank you all.